In this video, we're going to talk about mental transmutation. Mental transmutation, also known as mental alchemy, is the science and the art of turning shit into gold. Turning shit into gold. That's what alchemy is. Alchemy is turning shit into gold. And the physical part of mental transmutation, the physical manifestation, is simply the effect of the cause, which is in the mind, because all is mental. I'm going to refer to the 7 principles, the 7 Hermetic principles from the Kybalion, the book The Kybalion, which I just finished listening to. You could go look it up on YouTube. It's 3 hours and 40 minutes or something. Really cool stuff. I listened to it 3 years ago and I decided to listen to it again this time around. And mental transmutation is it's in the 4th principle, which is the principle of polarity. And so basically, due to the dualistic nature of creation, every pole, everything has its polar opposite. So cold has the polar opposite of heat. They just vibrate at different rates. Heat vibrates more rapidly. Cold vibrates slowly. You could see its manifestation in your own physical body. If you're cold, you're stiff. The blood is moving at a slower rate, vibrating at a slower rate. If you're hot, you're vibrating at a higher rate. Like if you go for a run and you're sweating, you're vibrating, you're moving at a higher rate, higher vibration, etc., etc., etc. So everything that is in the dualistic world has its polar opposite. So the opposite of fear is courage. The opposite of love, and I'm not referring to cosmic love here, okay? There's a pretty big distinction here. I'm referring to love as we know it. I love you because you're my brother or you're my dad, you know, a conditional love, human love. So there is the opposite of love is hate. The opposite of cold is heat or hot. The opposite of day is night. The opposite of fear is courage. So mental transmutation, also known as mental alchemy, is the art and science of transmuting, taking yourself as the practitioner from one end of the pole to the other, turning shit into gold. And in order to do that, as far as I understand, at least according to the Kybalion, that when you do mental transmutation, you can only do it on the 2 things that are opposing. In other words, if you find yourself fearful, you're afraid of something, this is where you can apply mental transmutation to transfer, to go from fear into courage. But you're not gonna go from fear into cold. They're not at the polar opposites of one another. They're not doing the dualistic dance together. See, the dualistic dance of the cold is the heat. The dualistic dance of fear is courage. So when you, as the alchemist, want to transfer yourself, take yourself from one node of the multiverse, if you will, to another, you go from one thing to its opposite. So you say, well, I'm afraid. I have a fear of uncertainty. What shall I do about my fear of uncertainty? And then you can meditate on the matter and use your will and focus and say, well, I'm going to transfer my fear into courage. So I'm going to act courageously. And then you act courageously. You maybe make a move to this new country, and or you quit your job, That's a courageous act because you're not enjoying the work anymore. And so you right there applied the fourth principle of polarity, and you've used your mental transmutation abilities to go from fear to courage. You didn't go from fear to cold, or from fear to heat, or from fear to sharpness. Because sharpness, the opposite of sharpness would be dullness. So if you're feeling dull and mentally fatigued and exhausted, then you could go from that to being sharp. You can mentally transmute that into being sharp. You see? So you can only really transmute on the same. You have to first recognize what it is that you would like to transmute and then find its polar opposite. It isn't random. It isn't like I'm going from fear into sharpness. That's it's two different things here with two different polar opposites. So this is why often they'll say your greatest weakness is your greatest strength, which is very true. If you've got a weakness, if you feel like you are feeling weak in some aspect of your life, perhaps you grew up in poverty, and you consider your greatest weakness to be that you've always been financially poor, and that has been always your greatest weakness. That is also your greatest strength. Why? Because as the alchemist, you have the chance to go from weakness. So that's my greatest weakness. What's the polar opposite of weakness? Is strength. What is the polar opposite of my biggest weakness? Is my biggest strength. You see, so you're taking yourself from your biggest weakness to your biggest strength, and you see that a lot in say, you know, you'll see quite often a significant portion of MMA fighters, boxers, combat artists were bullied in their childhood, and so that was their greatest weakness became their greatest strength. Same thing with a lot of people who make a lot of money. Now, again, I'm just saying it is not always the case. Lots of rich dudes were just rich as the time they were born. They were born with a golden spoon. And some fighters are just mean, and they were actually bullies turned into fighters. But I'm showing you that you will still see a significant portion also of rich people. 50 Cent comes to my mind because you grew up in massive poverty. But a lot of you'll see a significant portion of people who have a lot of money, and they were just poor growing up. Same thing. They were unconsciously, in most cases, using the power of mental transmutation, their alchemical powers, to take themselves from one part of the polarity to another part of the polarity. You see? So I can think in my own life, definitely, that was the case, certainly. I experienced periods of excessive shyness, specifically between the ages of 10 and 22, 23. I started getting chubby when I was 9, and then that started to cause me low self-esteem, and it started to cause me shyness, and that shyness eventually just carried over all the way until maybe when I was 22, 23. And so that turned out to be something for me that I struggled with most of basically my teen life and my early 20s. Turned out to be now my greatest blessing. What was a curse, that excessive shyness, became my greatest blessing, which is, I'm quite outspoken and, sort of a free spirit now, and an expressive soul, if you will, an expressive mind, body, spirit complex. Uh, from this shyness, what's the polar opposite of shyness? Is outspokenness. So I also unconsciously at the time took myself from one part of the duality of the polarity, the fourth Hermetic principle, to the other part of the polarity. So as the alchemist, you could begin to identify all the areas in your life that you want to improve upon, and you could ask yourself, what is the polar opposite of that? And then take yourself into that polar opposite. Take yourself into that polar opposite. If you hate someone, you could love them also. Okay, so if there's somebody in your, and you see this a lot in all kinds of relationships. I used to love you, but now I hate your guts, right? You see it a lot in romantic relationships. You know, the two people are in love, and now they split up and they hate each other's guts. The love turned into hate, so they took themselves from see, each part of the polarity, one vibrates higher, one vibrates lower. That's also a polarity, high and low. So they just happen to go from a higher vibrational pole to a lower vibrational pole, and so that's common. So you could also apply your alchemical abilities into your relationships in your life with family members, with everybody, really, friends, etc. If you hate someone, look at it as a chance to practice mental alchemy. Now, how do you practice mental alchemy? You have to meditate and be able to gather enough will in your third eye, in your mind. That's why it's called mental transmutation, because it happens in the mind. You've got to practice it right here, right here. And that requires meditative focus. You have to be able to calm your mind, and you have to be able to focus it on the desired pole. So if your desired pole is love, you have to sit down first, close your eyes, and be quiet enough to be able to pinpoint the part of the polarity that you want to operate on, which is, let's say in this case, love, and then maybe see yourself loving that person that you hate, and feel yourself loving that person that you hate. And instead of seeing the qualities in which makes you hateful of them, you may be able to now focus on their qualities that make you feel love towards them. That's just an example. Or you may be able to focus, if let's say you hate your dad or your mom for whatever reason, they abandoned you or something, or you guys fought or whatever, you may be able to look at the qualities in which they raised you, they supported you with money, they supported you with food, they supported you with this, with that, which now is transmuting you, transferring you from one part of the polarity of the duality into the other part of the duality. And in the same way, if you want to go from, let's say, the shy part into the outspoken part of the polarity, then you could do the same thing. You could meditate, calm down, and then begin to see yourself and focus. It's a focus on the scenario in which you happen to be outspoken and expressive. And then through that act of transmutation, you take yourself from one part of the polarity to the other. It is essentially visualization. Visualization is mental alchemy. It is mental transmutation. And visualization, successful visualization, can only happen when the mind is calm and when the focus is strong. When the focus on something is strong enough, then and only then can you successfully apply these alchemical principles and transfer yourself. So it's a really beautiful thing to contemplate. It's a beautiful thing to contemplate, because the first Hermetic principle, and I've got a video coming up on all 7 principles. That will be a detailed one, and I'm waiting for things to process and digest in my mind before I can make the video, because I know it's going to be a long video, and it's a beautiful thing to contemplate that the all is mind, the first Hermetic principle. So everything is in your mind. You have to travel nowhere, you have to go nowhere physical, because the physical is not even physical. And science is coming to realize that now. That actually nothing is physical, that all matter, which is physical, which is matter, is, in the words of Bill Hicks, all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, which is the third Hermetic principle, that everything vibrates. All matter is merely energy condensed. So this is energy. This is not physical. It's just energy condensed to a slow vibration. It's just slow vibration. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we're the imaginations of ourselves. So everything is mental. All, which is another name for infinite intelligence, for God, consciousness, the all is mental. Therefore, if you want to change anything, absolutely anything, then you must go to your mind and your mind alone. Because if you are changing anything in the physical with the hope of seeing long lasting results, that isn't going to happen, because you're playing in the effects and not the cause, which is the sixth Hermetic principle. A video has to come up on that soon. You're playing in the effects and not the cause, because the physical is the effects, the effect of the cause, which is the mind, which is the mental. So if you want to carry out changes successfully, to the mind you must go, and only the mind. Not out there, not to change, well, I'm gonna change my location in the hopes of having my life turn around. It's not gonna happen. I'm going to change my boyfriend or girlfriend in the hopes of seeing some positive changes in my life. No, not gonna happen. I'm going to change my job in the hopes of something happening. So I'm going to switch from this company to that company because that company looks like they treat their employees better. But it's the same mind. You're bringing the same. It's the same. It's the same filtering mechanism, because your mind is the measuring device of reality. It's the measuring. It's the filter. It's what plays out the movie. It's the same filter. So it's going to see the same things. It's so you're gonna get into a new relationship, and the same pattern's gonna happen, because nothing has changed in the filtering mechanism. And so even the types of people you attract into your new relationship actually end up being just a carbon copy of the previous people. You may not realize it because they look different, they sound different, you know, their voice is different, they look different. Maybe the previous your previous girlfriend had blonde hair, this one has dark hair. So it may not seem to you initially because you're so caught up in the illusion of physicality and materialism, but actually you attracted roughly the same person. And that's because you have roughly the same measuring device, the same mental measuring device, the same mechanism. And so the same pattern is going to happen. And it's same thing with your job, changing one job to another. It's, you know, oh, well, that company treats their employees better, right? But it's going to run into the same problems again. The same whatever issues you've had, you're going to run into the same issues. And so yeah, so you have the power. You are the creator of your own reality, and you have the power to play whatever movie you want to play. But you must understand, you must absolutely understand, understand, overstand that the change is going to happen in your mind. It's going to happen in your mind. If you would like to establish new habits, you're going to have to go to your mind first, because what are habits? Habits are physical responses, physical subconscious programs of what? Of whatever program is running in your mind. A habit is a physical behavior, it's a physical response. Like, oh, I have the habit of taking a walk, I am in the habit of eating once a day, etc. Well, what is eating once a day? It's a physical action, right? I'm eating once, it's physical. But what is the cause of that? It's mental. The mental is the cause, the physical is the effect. The physical is an illusion, it just appears to be physical. So if you want new habits, then you must go to the mind first. Everything starts in the mind. It's the seed. It's the seed. It's where things blossom. We are in the mind of God, of the All, of God, of infinite intelligence. We are in the mind of the All. The All cannot be spoken, really. It's shapeless and formless. It doesn't actually have a physical. It doesn't even have a container. It's not. It cannot be contained. And so everything within existence itself is imagination. We are imaginary characters in each other's heads. So you think Saeed is a certain person, and the next viewer subscriber viewing this video thinks of Saeed as another person, because I am an imaginary character in your head. So the bottom line, the moral of the story is be wise and spend time, or let's say this: stop trying to change the external, and instead go into the internal, because that's where real change occurs, and anything can change. If life has taught me anything, is that you can change almost anything. And I have changed my mind body complex character Saeed so many times in my life, in his life, so many times. So many times I went into the mind and I used visualizations and I changed certain aspects of the character that I at the time deemed no longer pleasant. Don't want to experience shyness anymore. So I went into the mind and I changed it. And I've done that so many times, and I continue to do that because I'm always looking for a more useful experience. More, you just outgrow experiences, you move on. So yeah, hopefully this video is helpful, and we'll have a video about the 7 Hermetic principles coming up. I just gotta let them digest. I just finished listening to the book. I recommend you listen to it also, and let it sit and let it process and let it digest. And when I'm ready, I will make a video on it. So so much gratitude for all our lovely, wonderful patrons for your consistent support, and all the people who also donate one time on PayPal. I just received a generous donation there. Thank you very much. The door of donations open, whether you want to throw in a couple of bucks a month on Patreon or just a one-time donation. The links are in the description. I appreciate every single one of you guys who have supported, continues to support, will support. All the love. And Saeed Mubayir on Instagram. And until next time, may the force be with you.